to get that right. We're recording. Yep, we're all set. Ready when you are. And thank you very much for being with us.
Well, thank you again for allowing us to join with you today. If there is a silver lining to the current problems that we're all facing, I think having Zoom meetings with some of our supporting churches, for us at least, has been a real pleasure and a real delight. Just for those of you who may not know, we're mission partners with the Church Mission Society, and we've been in Lebanon for about 5 years now. And in fact, St. Faith's was the first of our churches to support us, apart from our home church. So you've been with us all through that journey, and we are indeed very grateful for your support all this time. And last October, we joined Arosha. We were working with a different NGO in Lebanon up until that time, and our service there really came to an end. And so we moved across to work with Arosha in Lebanon. And Audrey will tell you a little bit about what we're doing, and we'll carry on after that.
So for those of you not familiar with Arosha, it is a worldwide Christian organisation engaging communities in nature conservation, and it has been active here in Lebanon since 1996. Colin is the new National Director, and I'm the Education and Church Liaison Officer. Arosha's strapline is conservation and hope. And so right from the start, we realised that given the current situation in Lebanon, we could not only just focus on wildlife, but had to ensure our work had benefits to the local community. Currently, we're regenerating 2 areas of derelict land into nature parks, places good for wildlife and somewhere that local people can enjoy and that schools can use for their outdoor education. The larger park is where we plan to grow organic fruit and vegetables, which we hope will provide food for the local communities and maybe offer some employment opportunities. Both the parks have areas for quiet contemplation and prayer. And Arosha has writing the gospel in the landscape is an important part of our work. And we're also looking at how we can engage more churches in Lebanon in caring for God's creation.
So we have lots of ideas, and we certainly value your prayers as we find our way through the complexities of bringing them to fruition in the current circumstances. Now, some of you may be wondering what wildlife conservation has to do with mission work. Shouldn't Audrey and I be focusing on saving souls, not worrying about saving the planet? Well, I'd like to spend just a couple of minutes giving just one reason why perhaps caring for God's creation is indeed an important part of the gospel message. And so at this point, I would like to just share the screen, if I may.
Hopefully that will work.
It says host as disabled.
Oh, let me undisable it. I didn't think I had disabled it. I'll try that.
That's lovely. Super. Thank you. Hopefully you can see a couple of quotes from scripture.
Yeah.
Yeah, lovely.
Great.
Okay.
No.
So today we hear a lot about global warming and about how our climate is changing. But if we look around the world, the people most affected by these changes tend to be the poor, the marginalized, and very often women more so than men. So perhaps if we frame climate change as an issue about justice and not simply a scientific one, then I think it is very much in line with what the Bible has to say, as we can see perhaps from the 2 quotes on the slide. And let me give you a couple of practical examples.
Colin, just a moment. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Sure.
It appears that I can't see your screen, and I don't know whether anyone else can.
Ah, right. Okay. Let me just
go
go
why
back.
That's not working.
Let me try.
Share.
Is that better?
Yes,
Yes.
it's better.
Sorry.
Okay.
That's
Had to
okay,
press
we're
another
there.
button. The joys of Zoom. Right. I'll just give you, so as I was saying, so if we frame it as climate justice, as you can see, a couple of quotes from scripture, it sort of fits in more with what the Bible has to say about climate justice. And I'd like to give just a couple of examples of what that might mean, using examples really from Lebanon. Now, sometimes I can't move I can't move my slides. That's interesting.
Yes, you can. This one.
Just bear with me a moment.
It's
Put
okay.
yours in.
There we go.
See if
Yep.
I can-
See? The back of valley. Got it. It's gone again.
There we go. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hopefully you can see some nice views now.
Yeah.
So the Bekaa Valley is a beautiful and fertile valley running through the centre of Lebanon. However, you can't go far without seeing informal tented settlements where tens of thousands of refugees from the war in neighbouring Syria live in makeshift accommodation. For various political reasons, they're not allowed to build more permanent structures, even though some have been here for many years. The life of the refugee is hard, and their homes provide scant protection from the winter storms, when it snows frequently and there is often flooding. Now, one of the predicted effects of climate change is an increase in the frequency and strength of storms. Now, for people like Audrey and I living in a well-built apartment, such an increase doesn't really have much of a big impact. But for refugees in the Bekaa, an increase in the severity of storms does present a real danger to life. However, although dangerous for the refugees, the winter snows do play an important part in the water supply to urban areas along the coast. Now, you may be surprised when I talk about snow in Lebanon, but as you can see from the satellite photo at the bottom, which shows sort of northern Lebanon and part of Syria, we do get quite a bit in winter.
Ooh.
But of course, the amount of snowfall varies from year to year. And we already experience some problems with water supply when the snowfall is below average. In these years, when the summer comes, people have to buy even more water than normal from private vendors at much higher cost than what comes through the taps. So if these changes become more frequent, then the effect will be felt most by the poorest people. Of course, Lebanon has other pressing problems too. The COVID pandemic, an economy in crisis, a weak government, and high levels of corruption. On top of which, there was the devastating explosion at the port of Beirut last year, said to be one of the most powerful non-nuclear explosions in history. Yet it seems to me that if you look around the world, many countries outside of the West suffer from similar issues, apart from the explosion. So perhaps there is an opportunity here for the church to take a lead on issues about climate change and environment, when governments cannot or simply do not. And thankfully, I think there is plenty in the church that the church can do to make a positive difference, as, to be fair, it is already doing in many places. Now, in some countries, the church has a significant influence in politics and can advocate at that level for the disadvantaged by speaking out on climate matters. And this is true also in Lebanon, which uniquely is in the Middle East, is a Christian country with a tradition going back to the time of Christ. Churches could also be beacons of good practice. Some denominations in Lebanon own large areas of land, and there are already examples of how they have adopted good environmental practices in the management of these lands. Perhaps New churches could be built using environmentally friendly techniques. Even the humble churchyard can be an oasis of green. Although I must admit the picture you can see on the right of the slide is taken from the UK and not in Lebanon. And then, of course, at the much smaller scale, even printing on both sides of the paper or recycling waste can be examples of good practice with spin-off benefits for the climate. And perhaps something here that might be useful here is a checklist produced by our colleagues A Rocha in the UK to help churches measure their eco-friendliness. Just stop sharing here a minute. There we go. But what can we do as individuals? Now, it's estimated that perhaps 1/3 of the world's population is at least culturally Christian. That's a lot of people. And so it seems to me that even small changes in individual behaviour could make a big difference. And yet I can remember only 1 or 2 Sunday services looking at environmental issues from a biblical perspective. So I wonder, are we perhaps missing an opportunity here? So, summing up, the church is not short of reasons why it should engage in the debate on climate change, because it is essentially a debate about justice for the disadvantaged, a key message of the gospel. And nor is it short of opportunities to demonstrate good practice. And we, as individual Christians, have plenty of opportunities to join in. So thank you for listening.
Thank you very much. I'm just going to change things around a bit for a moment. Right. Colin and Audrey will be here in the not the coffee bit after the service to, for informal questions and answers at that point. So we'll now move back into the service and I will stop the recording as well.